Hello, welcome to the Healthy Alternatives podcast. I am Dr. Christine Sauer with DocChristine.com. Today's show is a recording of my radio show of the same name. Enjoy! Good afternoon, this is Dr. Christine Sauer, your host of the show Healthy Alternatives here on 97.5 CIOE FM with live stream on communityradio.ca every Thursday at 12 noon Atlantic Standard Time. Thanks for tuning in today. In this show, I will talk, mostly with guests, about all aspects of health, healthcare and wellness, from conventional to alternative and everything in between. My mission for this radio show is to help change people's lives for the better by informing them about different options to get and stay healthy and well so they can choose for themselves which option might work in their case. And if you feel you are stuck in a dark place, I want to tell you, don't give up. There is a light at the end of the tunnel for you too. Today, I'm extremely pleased to have back Lindsay Dupuis. Welcome back, Lindsay. I hope I pronounced it right the first time this time.
Yeah, it's good. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Now, Lindsay, you are a mindfulness-based mental health counselor living here in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Right. Yeah.
It was interesting in the first part of this show that aired on October 24th, sorry, my fault. And we talked about your story, how you started off in Kingston, Ontario, and studied psychology, Buddhism, and mental health at the University of Toronto, and then actually decided to travel to Africa.
Right. Yeah.
Now, we didn't get a little bit more into that, but you are doing some awesome work there. So tell us a little bit about more what you started in Africa and what you did after you went back.
Right. Okay. So, my first time in Tanzania was in 2011. So it's been 8 years now. And as I was saying in the last interview, I was there sort of as a student in between my postgraduate and my master's studies in counseling psychology. And I went initially to work with young girls to help with their mental health care.
Now, question, did you go with any organization or was it all on your own volition?
It was all my own. Yeah, It was grassroots.
That is courageous.
I was living in a house for long-term volunteers.
Okay.
So, I had a nice base. It was run by an Australian woman who would help the volunteers connect with local groups that needed help. So it was, it was very.
What
very
kind
grassroots.
of accommodation was it? Because many people don't know in Tanzania, they think of a little hut out in the bush.
Well, it was almost that. Yeah, it was. Well, it was a house. It was a house just on the outskirts of Moshi, which is at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro. And beautiful. So it was beautiful. You had a view of Kilimanjaro, but it was close to a town, so you could walk in and get, all of your groceries or food, or you could go to coffee shops and things like that. So,
but there was probably not a big grocery store, more like open markets, or how did it work?
I mean, there were some small grocery stores, but mostly, markets and little corner stores and things like that for the most part.
So as a former mountain climber, I have to ask you, did you ever go on top of Mount Kilimanjaro?
You know what? I didn't. But I wouldn't say no to doing it in the future.
Oh, sounds good. Okay, tell us a little bit about how you found your girls to work with and what you ended up doing for them.
Well, I didn't actually work with them at all. I didn't even get to meet them because they were in such a desperate situation that they had dropped out of this program, which was about to start when I arrived. And a lot of them were teenagers, and they thought, well, my biggest problem is that I don't have any money. I can't afford food and all the basics.
Shelter.
So, Yeah, so they would go out on the street and earn money that way to take
Sell
care of
themselves?
their basic needs. Exactly. So
Oh, wow.
the program, it didn't even start. It was kind of too late. So I started to think about, well, if I want to, I was there for about 5 months, and I thought I want to make good use of my time and do something impactful. So even though I went to do mental health work, I came back to doing fundraising. I thought, well, why not?
That's what they needed for their mental health.
Exactly.
Because it's not a good condition for a woman to have to sell their body to eat.
Absolutely.
So you did something that made a difference and was connected with their mental health on the long run.
Well, that's just it. I mean, when I was there, the first time I really saw their struggles with their basic needs, and a lot of them were struggling with physical health conditions because of their stress, was just causing all sorts of ailments. And
how's the healthcare down there? Did they have any coverage, or is there no healthcare unless you have money?
It's so they would have to pay for
antibiotics,
care and medications, and just really sad situation. And I was working with these.
Thing to be grateful for in Canada. We have at least basic care available.
Absolutely, yeah. So we really, can take it for granted, I think. But
and that's important to know. It's not worldwide. So what did you end up doing for those poor girls?
Well, I got a fundraiser going. I had run a half marathon before I went over and done. I did some fundraising that way, and I thought I'd put the money towards starting up small businesses. And I also did some fundraising through the college that I did my postgrad diploma at. So we raised enough to start a chicken co-op with one group of women, about 35 women in a small village.
How did they do that in practical? I mean, I know what it means to chicken keep. We have chickens at home. But how did they do that in Tanzania? How many chicken per woman, or did they need, or did they all work together?
They all worked together. And I think, I think it was starting with, might have only been about 20 chickens or something to start with. But it's grown over the years, and they now have a fully functioning, I actually can't even tell you the number of chickens they have now, but it's a lot
exciting. More. So they sell the eggs and the meat?
Yeah, and the meat, yeah. And they're sustaining themselves, and they're doing quite well.
Now, how do you sell a chicken in Tanzania? Do you sell it alive?
In most cases at the market, they're sold alive.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I think it's important that people don't think it's like here you go to the supermarket and buy a skinless, boneless chicken breast. You buy a live chicken and then you kill it and eat it, and you know what you have.
Exactly.
And you eat all of it except for the feathers.
Exactly. So that was one of the groups, and the other group of women was in a separate community, and we did small business startups. So we got them running just very simple, basic businesses. Most of them were running or selling fruits and veggies in the market. So it was enough for them.
How did they get the fruit and veggies?
A lot of the women are getting the produce from local farms, and a few of them are actually farming them themselves.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. So they made enough to sustain themselves with that?
Yes. So I returned to Tanzania this spring in 2019, and I was amazed to see the transformation. It didn't take much to start up these small businesses, but it was enough for them to cover their basic needs. I saw women who were actually suicidal in 2011 and just totally transform. And when I saw them again 8 years later, there's one in particular I'm thinking of. She just had the biggest smile on her face, and she had built a new house. She had installed a water tap on her property, and she could afford her food and medications, and it was just like night and day. So, I mean, the fact that they can build an entirely new house for themselves says a lot.
How little they need to do that.
Exactly.
And what a difference you made in that little time, really. And that must be very satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I saw, there was a whole mixed bag of results. I had some very successful cases where, like I said, some of the women had actually built new houses, and some of them, their businesses had fallen through, and they were struggling again. And then I saw a little bit of everything in between as well. So, but the one thing I really did notice was that their mental health had improved so much.
I can imagine.
I mean, the focus was going back to basics, but at the end of the day, it really did help their mental health, which was the original purpose of me going to Tanzania.
Exactly. And how important is it for a woman that's prostituting herself to have to eat and afford basic medical care, which comes with a job, really, to be able to quit that degrading profession? In a way, it is degrading, even to most women it is. Very few women choose that as a profession. There are such, and I respect that, but most don't. And to go, that is damaging to your mental health, to have to feel that you're trapped in doing stuff like that, selling yourself, to being able to make a living that you can talk about.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, a lot of these women were not necessarily, they weren't working as prostitutes. That was the original group of girls that I was supposed to work with. But a lot of these women were just felt so hopeless and helpless, and they didn't have... a lot of them don't have husbands. Many of them were widowed or divorced, and they didn't have the education to earn a living for themselves after their husband wasn't in their life anymore.
Well, that's an interesting topic too, and I want to talk a little bit more about that, how that goes together in the second half of the broadcast here. And that is a nice way to end the first part, because everybody wants to know what happened to those women. Why can't they live without a husband in Tanzania? This brings us to the end of the first half of today's broadcast here on 97.5 CIOE-FM Community Radio. So please tune in after the commercial break for more about mental health and Africa and Lindsay Dupuis. Hello and welcome back for Healthy Alternatives here on 97.5 CIOE-FM or on the web at communityradio.ca. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Sauer, and today I'm talking with mindfulness-based mental health counselor Lindsay Dupuis. Welcome back, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Now, in the first half, we talked a little bit about what difference your work in Africa made. Tell us a little bit more about that and how that evolved from 2011, 2019 to what you're doing now.
Right. So, yeah, when I was back in Tanzania this year, I really saw such a difference. And as I was starting to explain, the women in Africa, once they lose their husband, which the life expectancy is not very high in East Africa, so once they lose their husband...
So what way can they lose? Yes, of course, the husband can die from some disease. How can they... But you also mentioned divorce. How is in Tanzania the divorce? Here we think, oh, you get divorced, your husband has to support you. How is it in Tanzania?
Not at all the same.
I believe that.
Yeah. So divorce is actually more common than you would probably think. So whether a woman loses her husband to death or to a divorce...
No, I'm just curious. Can the husband just say, I divorce you, and the woman has to go? Or how does it work?
Well, I don't know the specifics.
Okay. Just curious, because I know Muslims can do that.
Right.
And it is always very weird to me. Some Muslims, the Muslims here that are moderated, they don't do that. But I've heard about the fundamentalists doing that, just sending the woman out and say, that's it.
Yeah.
But they got somehow divorced, they lost their husband and no support.
There's a large Christian population, so the majority of women that I've worked with have been coming from the Christian faith, and divorce. In many cases, the the woman is left with the children, and the husband leaves. And in some cases, the family of the husbands will actually blame the women for maybe the husband's divorce or passing, and the woman is left to feel like it's her fault and she doesn't get any support.
Wow.
So, this isn't necessarily every single case, but from
but
what
that
I
would impact
observed,
your mental health really bad.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not only do you get no support, you lose your husband that maybe you love, and then his family blames you.
Yeah,
for
there's
everything.
shame, there's stigma, and then they're left to care for their kids on their own. But because there's been a very traditional system in Tanzania where the men are the breadwinners and the women don't have as much education. Things are changing, of course, but that's what I saw a lot of. So once the woman was on her own, she didn't have that education to be able to make her employable, basically. And she was just kind of left unemployed, helpless without much assistance at all, or any assistance at all.
So your small business program really helped them have some income for themselves and their children, and made a big difference.
It really, again, it didn't, for some of the businesses, it might have taken like 30 Canadian dollars. But it made such a difference that, again, you saw a woman who was suicidal to being just having such a big smile on her face. And when I saw her 8 years later, she ran over and she looked 8 years younger, quite frankly. And she said, "My stress is gone. Thank you so much." And she was in tears of joy.
That's not heartwarming, and that's worth $30.
Yeah.
Now, how did you combine that with the meditation and lead to what you're doing now?
Yeah, great question. So basically what I saw was a big improvement in the women. Their basic needs were met and their mental health was doing much, much better. So when I spoke to them the second time around, they said, "We would love to keep on going with this. Like, we would love to actually focus more on our mental health now because their basic needs were being met."
Yes.
And the funny thing is that in 2011, there's no Swahili word for mental health. And it was such a taboo. Nobody spoke about it. It just hardly, again, I think that's one of the reasons why the focus went towards the basic needs.
Yes.
But this time around, I was shocked that there was so much talk about mental health. And in fact, once some of the people that I met, local people that I met, found out that I practice mindfulness and teach meditation, they lit up and they said, "Oh my goodness, I've heard all about this. This is really popular. Can you teach us?"
Excellent.
So I was quite surprised. But because they seemed so keen to learn, I thought, well, of course, I'll teach them if they're asking for that. So I ended up actually teaching this group of 11 ladies, they're up to about 14 or 15 now, how to meditate. These are the ones who started the small businesses.
Yeah.
And they responded really well. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I had a translator to help me, and we did some basic sort of group mindfulness meditation. And I just, great feedback from them. They seemed really to benefit a lot.
Yes.
So what we ended up doing, I got this idea. Well, a lot of my old clients were asking me over the years to record some of my guided meditations. They said, once we're done your workshop or your course, we'd love to access your work. So I had that on the back burner for a while, and I thought, okay, well, this might be a really good opportunity. What if I finally, put together this collection of meditations for my clients back home, or anybody, they don't have to be clients, and at the same time, dedicate them to each of these women. Oh. So I'm teaching them and at the same time offering something to help people back at home or anywhere in the world. So with the women's consent. They agreed to be video recorded in meditation. So I did sort of a dedicated practice for each of them. And once I came back home, I started to edit the videos, and I'm still doing this now, recording
Excellent.
meditations. So I have a YouTube channel right now, and I've got four or five practices up so far. There will be 14 in total, one for each of the women. And
they're in English, I suppose.
They're in English, yes.
That's better, because
I don't speak Swahili.
most of the
wish.
people won't speak Swahili either. Some do. We have a lot of people from Africa that may speak it.
For sure.
And there's many other languages, so that's exciting. So how can you raise money with that? How will you raise money? What's your plans?
So at this point, it's a donation. It's by donation.
Yes.
So I'm not asking for a lot, but if people are interested in trying my practices, I just ask a one-time little donation. Can go a long way, and they will go towards further some education for the women, so that once we start expanding their businesses or starting up new businesses for new women who join the group, that they know what they're doing this time, so that they don't fail.
Now that is really exciting, and I think everybody that listens wants to be part of this. And how can they find you? How can they start donating to you if they feel touched by the story of those women? By just $20, $30 Canadian makes such a difference.
Yeah.
How can they find you? How can they go on YouTube, find those meditations? How can they find you and donate?
Yeah, so they can find me on my website, lindsaydupuis.ca. So that's LINDSAYDUPUIS.ca. And they can also email me at hello@lindsaydupuis.ca. And they can type my name into YouTube and find me that way.
Now that is wonderful, and probably you have a link to your YouTube on your website.
Yes, that's correct.
That is wonderful, and you're on Facebook, Instagram, and even on LinkedIn. So wherever you choose to hang out, find Lindsay Dupuis.
Exactly.
She's a lovely lady. She looks younger than she says she is. I don't believe it. You're a young lady. And she's meditating, which keeps her younger than she says. And she's helping others with it. And that is such a wonderful thing to do, Lindsay.
Well, thank you.
I really appreciate that, because we are all one in this world.
That's just it.
We're all one, whether we live in India, Africa, wherever we live. Thank you so much for being on my show. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
And this brings me to the end of today's show. Please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions, thoughts, comments, or suggestions. Or if you like to contact Lindsay and lost her contact info, my email here is christine@communityradio.ca, or contact me through my website, docchristine.com, docchristine.com. I'm always grateful for any feedback. I also want to extend a special thank you to today's producer, Cecil Wright. Thanks, Cecil. You're the best. You might not know this, but this is a volunteer-run, non-profit radio station. And we even have an art gallery if you're local and you'd like to drop in. We are at 11 Glendale Avenue, Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia. Thank you all for listening to Healthy Alternatives. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Sauer. Tune in next Thursday at noon on 97.5 CIOE FM Community Radio with live stream on communityradio.ca for the next episode. Goodbye and have a great day.